Your mic is on. Go.
Watching Uongozi today, we continue pace with the conversation on leadership and one iconic figure that has been in the public service that is being praised right now. Having served for 42 good years as a public servant, he bows out. He's very humble, self-effacing, cool, calm, and collected. You will describe him, and now rich repository of knowledge is in him on how you can run a public office. This is Joseph Kinyua, and also this is a story that is tucked away inside the Daily Nation today. And at a glance, end of a 40-year civil service career, joining the government as a fresh face economist attached to the Central Bank of Kenya in 1980, the 70-year-old rose through the ranks to be an earshot away from the most powerful men in Kenya, President Mwai Kibaki, Uhuru Kenyatta, and William Ruto. He served as permanent secretary in 2002, just a few months before President Daniel Moi retired. For the past 9 years, the University of Nairobi alumni was the head of public service in retired President Kenyatta's government. Described in government, the bespectacled septuagenarian wielded immense power, and this is on page 10 of today's Daily Nation. I think from the front page, they're saying page 4, but that is where it's tucked away. And I wanted just to hear also from Churchill Suba. If we were to learn on how to run a public service and the dead hand of bureaucracy, then this will be the man to tell us.
Exactly. I think we need to recognize merit where there is. And I would not attribute Kinyua's stellar performance in the public service to luck. I think it is, I've had occasion to watch him from a safe distance. The only time I've been to State House was when we accompanied the Makonde all the way from Kwale and Mombasa, as they were agitating for citizenship. You know, the Makonde originally came from Mozambique, and so in the company of such other, groups like the Wapemba, the Warundi, communities that have lived in the coast for years. And having been at the Bomas Constitutional Conference, where part of the constitutional provision was that such people ought to have been granted citizenship after, a certain period of time. We accompanied, and somehow we found ourselves in State House because the government, despite frustrating us all the way from the coast to Nairobi, at some point being held in custody in Voi during the tough times of Regional Commissioner Marwa, who is now Principal Secretary. And I saw, as you have rightly described, a very self-effacing man. You could barely recognize him in between the Makonde. He had a way of, talking with them. And of course, the Makonde have intermarried. And some of the people that they have intermarried are Kikuyu of Kenya and the Mijikenda. So he got speaking to them even in Kikuyu. And I saw a man who really would adjust depending on circumstances. And I think if there is anyone who has the best institutional memory of the government as we have known him for the last 30 or 42 years that he has been in government, it's Joseph Kinyua. And I think we must learn from him. What perhaps has also kept him going that long in the civil service is his lack of political ambition. People have to make up their mind. Because quite often you serve for 2-3 years, even as an undersecretary. And then you think you should be MP, you should be senator, and all that kind of thing. And so this is a man who was very, very clear from the outset that he was not going to be distracted into elective politics And that kept him focused, and that's why he has such, you know, a rich legacy in the civil service. And it would be good if, you know, he pens down some of his experiences, because, you know, age also has a way of catching up with people, and we do not want to lose him begin losing his memory. We are praying that he keeps his memory intact until further notice. But of course, it would be good that, you know, just when he's fresh from the civil service, he begins to sit with one of your colleagues in the media houses to help him recollect some of his experiences. And it would be interesting to know some of the, you know, the dynamics, for example, that happens during transitions. Because learning from some of the publications I've seen in the recent past, you know, it's very interesting. For example, Lee, writing about, you know, Kenyatta and Moi, and some of the weird things that happened. And one of the reasons I bought Lee's book is because of the revelation of how some of us, you know, got tortured in Nyayo House because of people who wanted to over-demonstrate their loyalty to the president. You know, people going to say, I know this type of people, they are in this place scheming against your government, and making a lot of money for themselves and the people in their entourage at the expense of other people's safety. And those of us who are lucky to survive must, you know, continue to read and learn on behalf of those who are not lucky to survive. Those who, you know, died at Nyayo House itself, those who, you know, died later, and those who have lived frustrated until their death because of such, you know, happening. So it will be interesting to know, you know, some of those dynamics, especially the Uhuruto succession. You know, these are buddies, and then all of a sudden there's a fallout. And then, you know, Ruto manages to succeed Uhuru. What is it? I'm sure Ruto must have had insiders, even as he claimed to be an outsider in government. He must have been getting, you know, intelligence. And these are the things that, you know, perhaps, you know, Kinyua would be better placed to say. But of course, given that he's a very reserved person, he might be hesitant and shy to disclose that. And that's why when you cannot do an autobiography, you do a biography. You attribute it to somebody else, so that whatever blame, you know, can be attributed to whoever, you know, manages to either talk to you, talk to your friends, to your kith and kin, and eventually, you know, the story is told to generations and generations to come.
So we learn about the intrigues of a government that we've never learned before. If he is willing actually to,
exactly,
you know, volunteer the information that he has from one transition to the other, and what are some of the high spots that we can say, wow, from different presidents up to where we are right now with the transition, as it were. Right, so I met him, I think, in 2021, yes, at a bookshop here in town. And I found him just to be still the same person that you see on TV. So you meet the hard copy and the soft copy, you find, oh, these are the one of the same stuff. There's nothing different. Very humble, even soft-spoken. And by that time, I was really worried because we had a conversation about the narrative of the hustler and the dynasty. And he was, you know, pointing out that we should be very careful, you know, even from media perspective, on how we are also perpetrating that particular narrative and how it is dangerous for the country. He looked very concerned. Right. Maybe we can wind up on that, unless you have anything to tell us about, we eagerly wait for the biography to come through. But for now, we just want to hear what the president had to say. Even as we're talking about public service, we had the cabinet secretaries, of course, being sworn in, and today it will be the handover ceremonies from their various offices as well. He spoke quite movingly on how he won't tolerate, you know, corruption in his government, on how he won't tolerate laziness. We want just to listen in how also he uploaded some of the CSs, of course, who will be handing over their dockets today to the new CSs that have been sworn in or was sworn in yesterday. Let's listen in to what the president had to say.
You have no option other than to succeed. Failure is not an option. Your celebrations will be very short-lived because I think you will be leaving your offices late. I didn't hear any one of you swear to serve their friends or their families or their regions or their religions. Each one of us here have sworn to serve the people of Kenya. I expect you to respect your oath of office and serve all Kenyans equally. All Kenyans cannot come to your office. They cannot come to prosecute their agenda. They have elected representatives, and we must take them as the people's representatives and work with them in a respectful manner so that we can achieve the goals we have set up for ourselves. Joseph Kinyua has made this transition seamless, and I want to congratulate Joseph. He has worked with me to make sure that Kenya gives an example of what a transition looks like.
The first thing I'm doing tomorrow or from this evening is I'm getting organized now to move to Kitale tomorrow to open the Kitale agricultural show.
Okay, welcome back. And of course, that is a transition that we just had there. The president speaking quite movingly regarding the new CSS, and the swearing in will be there. Of course, we've heard also of Joseph Kinyua. But we can see also from the dailies as well that he is reading a route act, so to speak. If you look at the Daily Nation, why would you think the president will begin from that particular note by reading a route act?
Well, I know, he knows as well as I do, that there are many issues on integrity that he needs to overcome. And therefore, at the onset, he has to clear the way that lack of integrity is not going to be part of his administration. Also, he has a number of challenges, given the fact that the team he has did not really get general approval of the people of Kenya through their representatives in parliament. Although I kept on reminding reminding the rest of Kenyans that these confirmation hearings are just a charade. A charade in the sense that none of them was dropped. A charade in the sense that we've agreed that there will be standing orders amendment to allow these cabinet secretaries to be answerable to members of parliament directly. And therefore, this confirmation hearing is sort of quasi-American it's actually in the ICs. It's neither British nor the American, and we have not developed something organic to Kenya that we can say, yes, this is our way of doing things. Remember, it is more than 3 months since the president was elected, and I've been wondering how we'll be able to count these 100 days. 100 days is starting from today, now that the new cabinet has been sworn in and has been gazetted, or is it going to start the day he was elected, or the day he was confirmed, or the day he was sworn in? So this is something that as a people, we must be clear about this transition. Yes, we had a good person in Kinyua, Joseph Kinyua, but at times people can complicate this transition. We had good people in the outgoing cabinet secretaries, but many other things can happen. I remember one afternoon, and I had to recall my title, which I wanted to register. Some lorry was moving parcels of paper from Ministry of Lands, and I was worried that my title might be one of them that may be moved and I'll be homeless. So this is something that we have to be careful as a people, that we have to accept what is our transition. Can we allow the outgoing president to be president for 3 months, and after 3 months all these confirmation hearings will have been done and we allow the new president to take over? Or are we going to be taking over in piecemeal? Because nobody will tell you when did Ruto take over the country. Nobody can tell you with certainty, and these are some of the lacunas we need to fill in. Finally, I think he knows he has a job ahead of him, And the job is first to put money in our pockets before he raids the pocket. Because right now, Kenyans are at their lowest. And therefore, the urgency with which he's telling the ministers or the cabinet secretaries to move is perhaps to be able to build a momentum for investment that will allow Kenyans to have something to cough to NSSF or any other institution for that matter. Yeah.
Right, and I think also that was raising eyebrows when we saw these trucks trucks carrying or ferrying title deeds on social media. We were never really told where they were being ferried. But isn't that just part of, maybe trying to, we're talking about digitization, we never know where they were going, or we expect to be given every move, or to be given information of every move in the office of government, especially critically.
It is important. Communication is key. I know the professor of leadership and management and governance will tell you that communication in any form of leadership is key. Tell us this weekend, we are moving all the files because now we are going digital. I've told you literally, I told my lawyer because I wanted to register one of my titles. And I decided, let me have the title first. I can register it when the tide is clear. It is worrying because you see, once you lose your title, the process of going through it, Ambrose Weda will tell you, is not as simple as just going to Ministry of Lands and the following day you come with a new title. You have to go and to the police to declare that you lost it or it was misplaced. You have to swear affidavit. You have to go through a lot of processes. I say rather than go through that process, let me just get my title back. When the tide is clear, I can go now formally and say, this is my title, I want to register. I've cleared any encumbrances on it. Okay. It is now a clean title, I can leave to my children. Yeah.
Right. Ambrose Weda, what do you have to say about this Riot Act, first of all, and then we discuss also what we expect from these cabinet secretaries?
Thank you, Dival. This Riot Act has been the normal speech. You look at history, sometimes you look at history, and always President Uhuru gave such a Riot Act. I think President Kibaki, although he was tempered. I think the new team, they need to be inducted. They need induction. They need people like Kinyua. They need people who have served like Honorable Kirwa here. Just to induct them how to be a cabinet secretary and how do you deliver. Otherwise, you see public display which eventually does not amount to much. Running to show that I am in charge. We are doing this, cabinet here, cabinet there, promising here, we will do this, we will do that, until when you go to the treasury, you're told, that is not even in the budget. What you are talking about is not in our budget, and if it was to be put in the budget, it will take us 4 years. And that includes even the president himself. Say this, but it is not in the budget. As we talk now, there is so much that needs to be done. It is very easy to say CBC, 1 month, done. When you go in, then you will find the quarter number. So they need induction, and a good cabinet secretary does not need to talk about 100 days. He needs to get into the ministry, develop a zinc with the officers there, look at the vision present, how it is to be improved, what it takes, they synchronize together, recalibrate the direction, and then they move. But if you do things because you want to be seen, I've seen some even governors. Some are going to sweep beaches, collecting that in the streets, and you can just see this one is lost. Anytime you see that it is your father in the house who is supposed to be bringing food and paying school fees, if you see he's the one sweeping the floor at home, kuna tabu. There's loss of vision, there's loss of direction. If you see it is the lecturer, professor like him, is the one looking for lost pens in the lecture theater, you know there's trouble. So these people need to recalibrate their minds from street where they were to cabinet secretaries. They should now recalibrate from demonstrating we have won this election to Mumesinduo to now we serving the people of Kenya. We have to recalibrate from our competitors to my people of Kenya, my fellow Kenyans. This is the the way that would make us zinc, the renewal of the mind. Otherwise, I know some cabinet secretaries, from what I see, will do very well. That you can see. Some will struggle. We are praying for a few that you can see that unless they do well, they will fail. Because they embody failure from the beginning. You see them as they walk and you say, this one, he needs the grace of Jehovah for him to close. So we pray for them, we pray for the president, we pray for this new team that they succeed. Because when they succeed, the country succeeds. When they don't do well, don't do well. But they need the renewal of the mind. Just like some of these leaders who are cleaning the beaches and cleaning the streets. You look at governors like the Governor of Paranya, or even Governor Nyung. They are not in the streets cleaning. They sit there and they do policy. So we wish these people well, we congratulate them, but let them not politic around doing drama. I'm opening this, opening that, and meanwhile there's nothing. They should do policy.
All right. Okay, we shall talk about drama much later. Let's hear from Churchill Suba.
I think from the very manner in which the appointments were made, they have been selected to politic. It's one of the most political cabinets post 2010 constitution. And so I would shudder to imagine that the president himself think that these men and women that he has appointed are going to immerse themselves in paperwork. They are politicians. They have served the better part of their lives in politics, and therefore they are likely to continue politicking. You see, the president knows the character of each and every one of those that he appointed. He worked with them during the campaigns, and I'm sure some of them are yet to be admitted to hospital because they are not used to such hard work. A number of them, and they are people we know. You know, some of us have interacted with them very closely when some of them were with us in the civil society. Some of them love their bottle. And there is more alcohol than blood in their systems. So the president was basically talking about things that are likely to happen in the coming future. But if these people are to perform, including those that we think are set to perform better, it will depend on which principal secretary is finally appointed to serve under them. Because if the cabinet secretary is a stranger in government, has never understood how the bureaucracy works, like Honorable Kinyua here, and then you pair him up with another principal secretary who is completely clueless, then don't expect much. So it will be interesting, because these appointments are not yet complete until the principal secretaries whose interviews are being conducted in a lot of secrecy. And I think we need to call out on the Public Service Commission. We want to have an idea of how the interviews are going on, because some of the people I saw on the short list are people who have forged academic certificates.
Really?
And we know them, and we'll soon be, waylaying them to tell them that you cannot, proceed to such a high office, having been confirmed even by the universities. And you people know some of these characters I'm talking about. They have been there in the NGO coordination board. The universities disowned them. And yet they are shortlisted as principal secretary. The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission investigated some of them and indeed established that they presented fake academic papers. Now, we get extremely concerned.
They've been shortlisted.
Yes, and are likely to be appointed. We are waiting to see whether they get appointed. But the fact that they were shortlisted could be an indication that they stand a chance to be appointed. They can rest assured that we will be there to pull them down from atop the trees that they intend to climb. But you see, I saw the president suggesting that, you know, some of the cabinet secretaries should even prepare their spouses that they might not return home. You know, some of those characters in the cabinet are people who would not want to be in the office beyond 6, because some of the credibility gaps that you know that still hang around their necks relate to acts that, you know, are best done in the night, and so we do not want them beyond those hours. The president should also not be over-optimistic and expect that just because he's a hard worker, that everybody else among the 22 will be hard workers. Naturally, if you report to the office at 8, to be honest, by 5, you are exhausted. So this idea of insisting that people hang their coats on the chairs beyond 5 to demonstrate that they are working hard is also hogwash. And I think the president needs to be more realistic and say, if you are committed to your work and you report and start by 8 or 9, of course, if weather does not want them to be the ones wiping the tables and mopping the floor, then the earliest their minister can report is probably 9, 10, when traffic is also low, so that they do not also cause a lot of traffic snarl-ups in the city. And so if somebody sits there, and you know, they are basically political spokespeople of the ministry that they are, assigned. And so we do expect that they'll provide the political leadership, the kind of image that, you know, the public would want, you know, to see of a cabinet minister. Of course, we expect some of them to be embroiled in scandals. It is natural in a team of 2022. And with all the manner of things that emerge during the vetting, I will not be surprised if any of them, sooner rather than later, gets caught up with their pants down, as they have been in the past, so that, you know, it will be natural. The normal graph will always apply. So the president should, expect that, you know, some of the intelligence reports he'll be getting from the performance of his cabinets, because those are the people mostly monitored, and the people that are attached to them as either bodyguards or aides are the same ones that will be filing reports of how they behave when they are out of the camera. You remember one time Mugabe wondered why, you know, his ministers used to dismiss their official drivers and bodyguards and say, "I'll drive myself." And he once wondered aloud why, you know, a minister would want to put his or her life at such a risk. Where is he going that he wants to drive himself or herself, and dismiss, you know, the official driver, dismiss the bodyguard? What is it they want to do? And so these characters that have just been appointed, you know, are human beings. They are vulnerable to those temptations of the world, no matter how much, you know, whether we would want to pray for them. Some of those prayers will not be answered, and we must be prepared that, you know,
whether we'll be praying amiss.
No, the prayers work. Like I'll pray for you, lay hands on him on timekeeping, and it will work.
Let's hear from Professor Seka. Professor Seka, there's a very interesting also editorial cartoon there. You can see, if we put it on full screen so that we can see it together. It's in the Star, actually, on page 3, where Celeste has really drawn a nice cartoon there. We have Rigathi Gachagua, who's holding the national cake, and Ruto the chicken there, the president. And we have Rigathi Gachagua, the deputy president, saying it is going to be delicious. Page 3 of the Star. It's going to be delicious. Right?
Page 3. Thank you. A very interesting cartoon, indeed, symbolizing what goes on in a number of public offices with the mentality of people that it is our time to eat. So you can see there are 3 things I want to speak to, given that the address, the riot, invoked the need and expectation of collective responsibility. The issue of collective responsibility has a number of imperatives. that must be considered. First of all, we must lay down a very clear principle that the culture of the cabinet is what drives the behavior of members of the cabinet. But that culture is something that is supposed to be cultivated, so that what we expect of the president is to lead from the front and produce an organizational culture that everybody aligns to. How? There are 6 very critical elements of good governance which he must address. Number 1, values. Number 2, beliefs. And that's where the ideological issue becomes very critical. Number 3, culture. We need both a national culture and appropriate institutional culture, or you can call it corporate culture. Number 4, the roles that people are going to play. Number 5, the strategies through which he is going to actualize the realization of the task of his lieutenants, demonstrating what you are calling collective responsibility, to establish the necessary camaraderie, what the French would call code d'esprit, team spirit. That is cultivated. It doesn't arise out of nowhere. And number 4, the process, which will characterize then the nature of implementation. Now, having looked at all this, it brings me to issue number 2, where this country has fallen flat, and they are unable to ingrain these 6 critical elements and principles, simply because there is no institutionalization of what we might call the political socialization of people who come to government. How do you expect them to have a particular perspective when there is not yet carried out what we can call perspective transformation? Perspective transformation is what will give people a sense of singleness of purpose and clear-mindedness because of what they want to achieve as a team. What happened in 1965 by removing the political socialization agenda from the Pan-African College that eventually became a Christian college? It was meant to be a political school for socialization. And in this nation, we still have that gap whereby then the cohering of a team, even at the cabinet level, has been an issue, because what are the values? What are the beliefs which are common? What are the defined roles? Without those, you can forget the question of collective responsibility being demonstrated as real and practical in our situation. This brings me to my issue number 3. That as individuals, these people have gone in with the interests. And you know that even in former governments, there have been what we call political cabals. In Kenyan language, they call it kitchen cabinets, who are very critical in moving things. And many of them are actually architects of what you can call leaderpreneurship and tenderpreneurship. In a patron-client system, you accept those operations to continue. And therefore, to be able to align people, polish them up, there needs to be an oversight, a spearheading for people in a given direction, that we expect very clear key performance indicators to be given to them, and that those who fail to meet those laid down standards be called to account. And I will keep going back to Klitigard when he says that corruption is monopoly plus discretion minus accountability.
Monopoly plus discretion minus accountability.
Yes.
I tell you, a good point to take a short break so that we can just marinate over that, right? what Professor Aseka is really talking about. Values, at the end of the day, is critical for this country. And I know also Mike Eldon has been writing quite extensively there, reminding us on our national values as well. When we come back, there seems to be a problem in Meru County, I should say, with the new governor as it is. We were talking about induction that was just being raised by Professor Wakili Ambrose Weda. And we have a petition already from the Meru County Assembly. And here it is, just to show you, so that we take a short break. We'll circle back with this particular petition. The petition to the County Assembly of Meru, pursuant to Standing Order number S1999, the County Assembly of Meru standing orders to urge the Meru County Assembly to initiate impeachment proceedings against Governor of Meru County, Honorable Faith Kawera Mwangaza, for gross misconduct and abuse of office, pursuant to Article 12310, 181, 232, and Chapter 6 of the Constitution of Kenya 2010, Section 1533. And of course, I can't read all the details there. It gives you an inkling of where we're headed after the short break. When we circle back, what is happening there? And Kawira, with her husband aside, running the affairs of the country, what is really so wrong with that particular picture? We had someone saying, we don't complain when, of course, we have the governor and the wife, alongside and running the affairs of the country. But when it flips, it is the wife and the husband. That is a problem. Is it really a problem? We'll take a short break.
KTN News. Get the whole story.
Announcing his God was the starting point of his predicament.
So ikawa kila mahali nikikimbia hakuna usaidizi. Maki huyu mtoto sasa ni mgonjwa. My wife naye pia by that time ni mgonjwa.
And in that process he lost a child, lost everything, and before he could realize he was almost to lose his family.
Hapo ndio mahali ambapo nilisema nao mahali imefikia. Mimi na Mungu acha tukae. Kama Mungu anaweza kunifanya kiwango hii, nikawa ninakuwa rejected all over. Hakuna kitu ambao kiko in my favor. So, kasema let God be. Sasa mambo ya Mungu kwenda huko.
Let's unpack his story.
We value your feedback and welcome any comments, queries, or complaints regarding our news content. You can get in touch with us on SMS 22155. Call 0719-012-450 or email feedback@standardmedia.co.ke, or you can send us a letter on Post Office Box 30080-00100 or deliver it to our offices at Standard Group Center, Mombasa Road, Nairobi. KTN News. Get the whole story.
Welcome back. You're watching Uongozi today here on Morning Prime. And as I promised, we are looking now at Meru County. Hardly has the dust settled, of course, in Meru County after the Kivumbi and the elections there. The governor is in the spotlight right now because of nepotism. And now the members of the county assembly, they want Mrs. Kawera out. That is a question that we want to, of course, look with our panelists right now. What is really going on? Is it warranted to have this particular petition? Let's just begin with you, Mheshimiwa Kirwa.
Thank you, Dibal, for this opportunity. I think the main problem with Africa has been lack of consistent leadership. And the way good professor said, we've not socialized ourselves into accepting what is my role as a leader vis-a-vis the role of other leaders, and how do we complement each other. Such that when I get into a position, I just assume this is my space and there's no other person to occupy this space. I would have expected the MCAs from Meru County to accept that in the election that we had on 9th of August, the results that came out perhaps were not expected, because there were 3 giants, including the current governor. The other one is the Honorable Kaitu Murungi, and the other one is the Honorable Mithika Rinturi, who was going also for governor in Meru. And therefore, the split of the votes, I know the governor got almost double the votes of the 2, or each of the 2. But when you look at it properly, it was 50-50 contest. And of course, there are those who are also supporters for Peter Munya, who did not participate for other reasons. All of them may, out of all the product of that election, be feeling that they were let down by the people of Meru. And therefore, they want to punish the governor for reasons other than real reasons. I don't think it is really time for us to start digging into some of these areas before the full complement of the leadership of the county is completed. And the best I know is that the role of the husband was ambassador at large. And he was ambassador at large to deal with issues affecting the youth and so forth. He's not a CEC and he's not a CEO of the county, which means I think the governor in our wisdom realized that there is need for the husband to play a role the way he has been playing a role, playing the guitar and singing all throughout Meru. And that is what attracted the vote. But the MCAs seem to have a different story, either from extraneous factors or from their own internal frustrations that they did not get the governor of their choice. Because I'm sure most of them either belong to other parties, they are not necessarily independent, and therefore they owe allegiance first to those parties, and the second now to the positions that they hold at the county. That is the major challenge, and that challenge comes from what Professor said. We do not have proper socialization of individuals in leadership. And at times somebody, when he gets into office, they imagine they are the ultimate holders of that office and there is no other authority. And as he put it, it is always good for any leader, and we are advising even the cabinet secretaries to come in, that don't spend time telling us what you want to do at the end of the year. I remember one time in the cabinet, President Kibaki advised us that if we are in March and you announce to somebody that in December we shall be doing 1, 2, 3, he told us that fellow will remember what you said in March, and possibly given circumstances altering in between, you may not be able to do that. He told us the best way to do things is to announce that this is what we are doing. And when it gets to December, tell them this is what we are doing, so that people keep abreast with what you are doing, not what you have promised them that you will be doing it come a certain period. So my take finally is to remind leaders collective responsibility means creating the necessary synergy to work as a team. Collective responsibility is not just collective for the sake of it. It is to work as a team. I cover your tracks, you cover my tracks, and we know that when you succeed as a cabinet secretary and I'm your colleague, I also succeed to a certain extent. That should be the way we should do it, and that is the way leadership should be. But it is deficit in Africa. The main problem is that there is a trust deficit in Africa. There is lack of personal integrity, like chapter 6. We talk about it, the lawyers will tell us from morning to evening. But chapter 6 is never actualized in reality. It is chapter 6 in our statutes, but it's not chapter 6 in our hearts.
In our statutes, but not in our hearts. I like it. But this could this also be politically instigated? Because we are seeing Kawira, she's an independent, of course, governor, so to speak, right now. We've had also a stellar success that we had from the governor of Laikipia, and Diritu Muriithi, being an independent. We've not seen this sort of, kerfuffle happening within the county assembly, and now we are seeing an impeachment that is looming right now. And Kawira herself, even in handling the public affairs, or maybe just handling the MCAs, we saw them walking out of the county assembly. Has she been sort of very adversarial in her approach, that now maybe they are resenting this sort of leadership element that is really coming from Kawira? You are the one who was talking about induction. So what sort of induction do we need also from the governors?
Induction, let us call these guys to order. They have been stunned. It's stunning what Mandela called paralyzed. Kawira has paralyzed them. You see, historically, Meru community, I don't recall them having elected any woman.
There was one.
Who was? Yes.
There was Anarita Kariminjeru. He was a member of parliament.
This story. You can see. These elections.
Anarita Kariminjeru.
You can see that.
Our whole journalist does not even know.
Because it is a drop in the ocean.
Yes, I know.
So it is one of the communities that we have been urging to say give women a chance and so on and so. So the only elective post that they have been good for is electing the women rep. Now, this lady wakes up and goes independent and goes for governor and gets it. 90% of men there are stunned. They are shocked. They can't believe it. And I think they are going to check even the way she walks. If she wears longer heels, shoes with longer heels, they say this woman is a funny one. If she wears flat ones, they say this woman. So part of her problem is 50% those gender nuances in that community. Why do I say so? She has not done anything. She has not started leading. She has not started ruling. She has not started much. All she has said is, this husband of mine, she is the first gentleman. The same way Governor Kirwa would say, my wife is the first lady.
The first lady, yes.
The same way we are saying Mama Rachel Ruto is the first lady of Kenya. Suppose she was the president, and then she says, Hon William Samuel Ruto, the first gentleman, will be like, nepotism. Nepotism. So I think we are judging the lady harshly because we feel embarrassed, we feel humiliated by her victory. And those MCAs do not know that if they make the governor dysfunctional, they will not deliver to the people of Meru. Because the governor is the one who has the pass, the one who has all these things. And then they have to have a direction. Let them just accept. The lady has come in, played her guitar, prayed her way to governorship against all odds. And she can pray against them.
Yeah.
You see these MCAs, they tried to do that to Professor Kibwana.
Yeah.
Until they didn't know Kibwana. Until Kibwana said, let us dissolve the county. It is only then they realize, oh, they lose the jobs.
Yes.
So, my people of Meru, please be careful. Let Governor Kawira work. It is not yet time for impeachment, both constitutional. Let's not just talk about abuse of office. Abuse of office is not putting too many kijikos of sugar on tea. Then you say, this is abuse of office.
Gross misconduct.
Gross misconduct is eating too much sugar. Gross misconduct? No. Abuse of office is when you confer a benefit on people contrary to law. Then you confer a benefit. She has not done her cabinet. She has not done all these things. She's just being derailed. She's just being frustrated. I think it is because we also lower the threshold of impeachment. The way we kicked around Sonko, or the way we kicked around Babaya Waititu, it has been made so easy. that if we don't want you, we face impeachment. So I think going forward, the Senate should also be strong enough and send a clear message. Governor Wamora spent his time fighting impeachment at the expense of the public, the taxpayers, because when the governor is in office fighting, nothing moves. So let us tighten the belts about impeachment. Let us even know that we should not spend a lot of resources, and let these people be called to order. And I call upon the president, if you want delivery, call upon these people of Meru, the MCAs, to order. Help the lady so that her prayers don't reach heaven. Because when they do, God has a special place for ladies. When they do, these men will start falling like the bingo. And I don't want to see such a thing. So be careful, people, man.
So the issue of culture really playing out here.
Kabisa.
Yeah, because in Meru, I think women have not been given that pedestal that they can lead.
Governor. Making woman governor. Yes. Independent. Hey. Yeah. Those people are not sleeping.
Also, this playing out when we had, was it the jury checker?
Yes.
And we had Raila also going to meet them. And now the problem they were actually taking special umbrage with was the fact that also Martha Karua came there.
Yes.
For
sacrilege.
Yeah, that is sacrilege.
Yes.
And so they are very, very, conservative, and maybe they were not prepared for a woman governor as it is. So this is the frustration she's facing. So where do we then have the nexus of culture and modernity in leadership, where Meru County is facing it?
You see, first of all, of course, the fact that our councils of elders are male-dominated is something that needs to change, because culture is not static. Culture is dynamic. I've had occasion to train for some organizations, an organization called Womankind that operates mainly in northern Kenya, Garissa, Mandera, Wajir, organize a training for elders on devolution. And when I show up, the lady who heads the organization, who is actually a former MP, both nominated and elected, gave opening remarks and then disappeared. So during tea break, I meet and I say, how can you invite me to come all the way to train, and then you give opening and say, I can't sit in that meeting. And some of the people, the so-called elders, were people young enough to be her children. So these are things that we need to challenge, and agree with whether that, some of these things could be playing out in Meru. But my point to the MCAs, they must grow up, because some of the things that have since come out of this debacle in Meru is that the MCAs went on a bonding session, whatever that means, to Mombasa, all the way to Mombasa. And such bondings only happen in places like Mombasa. And invited the governor, who honored the invitation, went in and gave opening remarks, and then left. Now, part of the quarrel out there is that the governor did not stay long enough to also bond with them. Now, as a governor and as the chief executive of the county, why would you spend a whole week bonding with people who are supposed to hold you to account, to oversight you? And I think the governor is right in trying to keep a safe distance from the shenanigans of the MCS. Because you can bond to a level where the credibility and moral authority is compromised. The second thing that has emerged in Meru is all this war about, World Development Fund. 2 days ago, I got an article published in The Nation, and I was saying that, even the attempts by some MPs to entrench the National Government Constituency Development Fund will not cure it of its unconstitutionality. Because if you are elected as lawmakers, as representatives of the people, you are a deliberative assembly that is not supposed to, indulge in direct implementation. And so, even if they wanted some funds allocated for development in the world for purposes of equity, the best they can do is to say, agree with the governor, that so far this thing is not in the law. But what we want to do is to, when you will be preparing your budget, and all this has to be approved by the county assembly anyway, they can ring fence some funds that each ward will be entitled to. But it must not be called ward development fund, because to do so would be to offend the constitution. Already the Supreme Court has pronounced itself on CDF. And so it goes without saying that even anything in the name of ward development fund is wrong ab initio from the very beginning. And so things that can be sorted out through negotiations are now playing out in the whole country as if, the concerns of Meru should bother people in Homa Bay. Of course, we know the mentality of MCS is the same, whether it is in Meru or Homa Bay or Migori or elsewhere. But we are saying that now both of them are in leadership. They both need to grow up. They need to respect the governor. They need not to embarrass her by walking out on her. In any case, impeachment should not be things that, the way it's being done, it's like a scarecrow. That, any small thing an MCA dangles impeachment. What the governor must now do immediately is to ignore the noise from the MCS and go back to the people. That's what Kibwana did. So long as you are in touch with the people and are constantly explaining yourself to the people, you will never go wrong, because those MCAs also got elected by the people. So the governor should for now ignore the MCAs, go back to the people and explain the genesis of this war between them. Coincidentally, the governor is Wawira. Then the leader of majority is Mawira. Now this fight between Wawira and Mawira, this fight between Mawira and Kawira and Mawira in Meru must stop, and the MCS must grow up and realize that they have a job to do. They must realize that they are representatives of the people, and that the governor so far has not reached the level of being impeached. They are going to be ashamed of themselves if they proceed that way. And then
even the lawyer who is advising them
I don't think there is even a lawyer involved so far. I think they just people are high on Mira and dangling impeachment and so on. If you were to fault the governor, for example, for appointing her husband, who is the first gentleman, and I think she explained that it is not. She's not being paid anything. It is a ceremonial position.
Listen to what they're saying. The facts are given here. If my director may just pick up this so that we may read along with the readers, our viewers. Saying on the 30th of August 2022, Honorable Kawira Mwangaza made a press release on her Facebook account and announced the appointment of Francis Mugai as General Manager for Meru County Revenue Board. This was contrary to Section 6 of the Meru Revenue Board Act 2014, which establishes that such appointment must undergo a competitive process and shall be subject to the approval by the County Assembly. On the 9th of September 2022, Honorable Kawira Mwangaza sent her first gentleman, Mr. Murega Baichu, to a stakeholder function of USOD. I think it should be USAID or something. The said Baichu is not a state, even the typos there, a state officer, and is not allowed to transact any business on behalf of the county government of Meru as established in Article 1 of the Constitution of Kenya 22. Annexed here too and marked TSM. Let me just go to the next one. These are some of the facts they are raising. On 30th September 2022, Honorable Kawira Mwangaza unveiled a cabinet team that was in violation of Article 27 of the Constitution of Kenya 2010 and Section 35 of the County Government Act number 17 of 2012. Effect to this violation, I wrote a memorandum and sworn affidavit to the County Assembly of Meru Appointment Committee and raised the said red flags. And then on the 30th of September 2022, Honorable Kawira appointed one Mr. Rufus Miriti as a County Secretary, contrary to Section 44 of the County Government Act, number 17, 2012. That is the reason why his name was not forwarded to the County Assembly for voting purposes. And I can read on, and it's just falling on the same vent.
You see all that is a case of, those are sour grapes.
Sour grapes.
The MCS have already lost in the court of public opinion. Politics is played out there. These are afterthoughts. These are afterthoughts. We know that, on the floor, part of the reason they walked out on the governor, for example. And some of them were shameless to even disclose that they were trying to call the governor on a Sunday. Honestly, we know that the governor is one of the most prayerful people, probably more prayerful than weather. And then, why would you want to call the governor on a Sunday? Why would the majority leader trying to reach out the governor? She ignored, she didn't pick my call, she didn't respond to my text. Honestly, I think there's a bit of childishness going on in Meru that must be called out. There is a lot of utoto, because here you are, you want the governor to bond with you in some far-flung hotel in Mombasa for longer than she would wish to. She keeps a safe distance, and you find fault with that. Here you are trying to call the governor on a Sunday. I mean, there is phone etiquette, and this is part of the induction, I think, that we are talking about. I personally would not call anyone after 9 p.m. After 9 p.m., unless it is an emergency, I'll not call.
Okay.
And on a Sunday, I'll not call you until after 11. That is phone etiquette. On weekend, what is the earliest time you can call anybody?
All right.
Not anything.
And those are not impeachable.
Yes.
They're not impeachable.
And those are things where you appoint Honorable Kirwa, Service Board, County Meru, there is a next organ who will say no. You don't impeach, you say this one no, this one no, this one no. If the president today appointed a Ugandan,
a vetting process.
Yes, for example, if the president today appointed a Ugandan CS, Kenya, and is not Kenya, we don't say impeach the president. He just goes to parliament and you say, where do you come from? Your ID, say I don't have. Then Wetangula says, out.
This is an interesting one, because who walked out on whom? Because on the 19th of October, it says here, October, Honorable Kawira Mwangaza stormed the county assembly of Meru Chambers by force with goons who dishonored the Honorable House, a confession she made via a press conference, the county headquarters. At the same date, she claimed that MCAs are cartels without substantiating which evidence her claims.
I mean, you can see how, they are on a fishing expedition. You see, they are trying to look for something to ensnare the governor. They have already lost it, those MCAs, whatever they are, the Mawiras or whatever they are. They have already lost it. In any case, there is a certain level of staff that you have a free hand to appoint. I think even when the Honorable Kinyua was a minister, their personal staff, and I would even challenge the MCAs, whom have they appointed, those MCAs, as their PAs? Are they not relatives? In fact, what the governor should do is do some basic survey and say, who is Mawira's PA? And you also, do a counter allegation of also doing nepotism.
If you may remember, the MCAs also were seeking allowances for their girlfriends.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. If you may remember. Let's hear from Professor Aseka.
Very interesting. I do appreciate one fact that Governor Kawira is a woman of the cloth. And therefore, she's one that is bound to fight things that are leaning towards corruption. And the importance of this lies in the fact that a leader needs to have a heart of integrity. And integrity is cultivated inside. And that on this basis, then, we have a number of things to consider. On her part, I can see some anomalies. On the part of the MCAs, some anomalies. And if you are to find fault, you will find fault on both sides. It was inexpedient for the husband to begin caricaturing the former governor in music. That was not well advised. Because by so doing, you generate a counter attack, because he also has a constituency, he has networks. He should have commanded certain skills of bringing people together. And on this point, I want to point out the issue of deficit of trust. It's a deficit at a personal level, that is personal trust. It's a deficit at the institutional level, institutional trust or organizational trust. It's a deficit at the strategic level, what we can call strategic foresight trust. So there is need for them to cultivate trust, which is a very critical component of social capital. And talking of social capital, then we have the bonding. We have the bridging that needs to be undertaken, but needs to be undertaken in a well-orchestrated atmosphere. Now, I will say, what possibility is there? That is, if both the MCS and the governor can be instructed, introduced to the need for exercising soft skills, interpersonal skills that are brought about by what we call emotional intelligence, so that they can cultivate both personal competencies of emotional intelligence and two, the social competencies. There is somebody called Mark Sanborn who talked about 6 principles of leadership. And critical in that is the principle of self-mastery. And I can see a deficiency in all in exercising this particular critical component. He talked of the power of execution, which really follows the strategies that you lay down and the timeliness of those strategies. A deficiency in execution can bring you down. 3, he talked about the power of the people, of power with the people, which is virtually the power of interpersonal skills. They are people skills. They need to cultivate that. Then he also talks of the power of focus, the power of communication, and the power of giving. Really, these are things, masteries, which people need to work on in order to produce the kind of leadership demueness that is expected of one. Without those, then people go haywire. And then lastly, there is an issue of cultural intelligence. We have talked about culture. And in cultural intelligence, people have that awareness, self-awareness, social awareness, political awareness. Then can define means of actualizing what we can call effective diversity management. And so I think the people in the counties, Meru included, they need to accept the fact that they can call on those institutions and scholars and agents of change that can intact them into these mechanics and processes so that they can cohere.
Thank you, Professor. I think that's a good place to wind up. Of course, we will continue training our focus on Meru County. Mark Sanborn, is he the author of the Fred Factor as well? Yeah?
Yes, but the book that they need to read is a small one. It's called You Don't Need a Title to Be a Leader.
You don't need a title to be a leader. Yeah. Right, you don't need a title to be a leader.
Yeah.
Your closing remarks, Bwana Mheshimiwa, 30 seconds, we are stuck for time.
Well, I will just close at the level of emotional intelligence, because emotional intelligence means you knowing who you are, identifying your immediate environment, and how you impact on that environment, and how you manipulate the factors in that environment to suit your focus. This is what we need as a people of Kenya. We need to rise above our pettiness, and we need to rise above our differences as individuals and look at the collective focus.
Thank you.
Thank you. Allow me just to congratulate our cabinet members who were sworn in yesterday. Wish you all the best. You know, the Bible says, better the end of a thing than the beginning. So you can't celebrate, but we want to watch you at the end. What have you done? What you need to do is to go into prayer and fasting so that you get a good principal secretary. That is the delivery point. If you get a bad one, you are cooked. Otherwise, we wish you well. We need this country to get moving. People are hungry, and we need food, and we are hungry, and we need it.
Super Churchill, 30 seconds.
My closing remarks would be to congratulate the new Attorney General and the Minister, the Cabinet Secretary for Interior, and to remind the two that the onus of ensuring that the Public Benefit Organizations Act is operationalized lies squarely with those two offices. The Ministry of Interior is already in contempt. We know the CS is new, but the ministry is in contempt. He's inheriting that contempt from the preceding minister, Matiang'i, Fred Matiang'i, and we want him to act so that they can get clean of that.
Thank you. Finally, Professor, 30 seconds.
Yes, I also want to join my colleagues in congratulating those that have been appointed to the cabinet, but I also want to remind them and other institutions, including the MCAs, the legislature, and what have you, that we need to open ourselves to training programs that can equip us through mentorship and coaching with the necessary skills to be able to cultivate dispositions of leadership and be able to exercise and carry out transformative governance in the country.
Thank you, Professor Eric Aseka. Really do appreciate Churchill Suber, Ambrose Weda, also Kipruto Arab Kirwa. Thank you for your cogent discussion this morning. And of course, Meru County don't turn out to be a merry County Juvenile Assembly with the intrigues that we're seeing right now. This is, according to panelists, really uncalled for. And also some of the facts that have been raised here, since now it's a petition, it's up to the courts, but they're not impeachable. Thank you very much for your valid company, right? Banasili, I can see him on the other side of the studio. He's, of course, standing at the ready to take you through the stories of entertainment on Celebrity Chat. Don't go away, right? You know also Kanye West right now has fallen big as far as Penny is concerned, and Brian will be handling that. Thank you for your valid company. We take a short break right now.